All right, let's get started. Let me share my screen. There we go. All right, that should be the slides. Here we go. How to get seed and pre-seed funding for your startup. That is the topic for today. Hopefully that's why everyone is here. I'd like to thank everyone who's attending today. Hopefully we can make it worth your time. So let's begin with startup basics, kind of set the stage a little bit, make sure everybody's on the same page. Here's the definition of a startup. According to Lean Startup, a startup is a human institution designed to deliver a service under conditions of extreme uncertainty. Now, I'm sure most business owners would say that starting any business is extreme uncertainty. But what really makes the startup model different than a traditional model? Why is it unique? Primarily because it begins with investors, not debt. The investors give you what you need to do what you said you were going to do. By not having to pay the investors back, this allows you to have rapid growth. And then at some point, there's going to be an investor exit. So just to clear up, a lot of entrepreneurs believe when we say exit, what's your exit? That is, what is you as a company's exit? The reality is that is an investor exit. When somebody says, what's your exit? They want to know, how as an investor do I get out with an ROI? All right, that's why it's different. Investors, rapid growth, and an investor exit. Or I like to say, instead of rapid growth, speed to market. Now, let's go through a couple key bullets about being a startup and getting funding and so forth. First off, investors invest in opportunity. We like to hear that, oh, they invest in teams, they invest in this, they invest in that. They invest in opportunities. That is what they invest in. Now, when you're talking to an investor, particularly on the first meeting, you're selling a vision. You're not selling a product. They're not a customer. They're not going to buy your product. They're not probably maybe never use your product. So what you're selling is the future. You're selling a vision, how you fit, and why now. Funding is a process, not a meeting. Statistically, you're going to meet with 60 investors before you close your deal or close your note. And so to keep that in mind, it's a process. It's not a single meeting. So if you talk to an investor and they aren't interested, but they showed some thoughts and asked good questions, don't throw them out because they didn't fund you. Keep them on your list. Ask them if you could come back later in a follow-up email or something. There may be a variety of reasons why you weren't ready at that, but it's not a meeting. It's a bunch of meetings. It's a process. Don't get too wrapped up over life and death on any one meeting. Now, a lot of you may be thinking, come to the US, come to Silicon Valley, get funded, because everybody gets funded in the Silicon Valley. The truth is, in general, it's easier to get funded where you live. People know who you are. They know where you are. They understand the economies. They understand what's going on in the country or state or wherever you're at. Next one, it's about innovation, not invention. So we hear so many startups come and pitch to us, and they like to say, nobody's doing what we're doing. Keep in mind, you're not inventing something in most cases. In many cases, you're innovating. I would say that the last thing really invented in the Silicon Valley was probably the microchip. Since then, all startups primarily have been based on innovation, not invention. Apple didn't invent the computer. Google didn't invent social media or search engines. Facebook didn't invent social media, and on and on and on. They took innovation of something that existed. So now let's look at that for a second. Invention. Invention is solving big problems, generally involving science, commonly called deep tech. Now, a lot of times, a lot of us as investors, when we say deep tech, to us, that really means anything that takes a lot of money up front to prove it, validate it, and create it. It's very costly. But if you invent in science in the deep tech world, the returns can be off the charts. There's your unicorns. In the case of the startup world, we're talking innovation. A better idea, faster, maybe cheaper, but you're not necessarily solving science. You're making a better mousetrap. Tesla did not invent the first electric car or the first electric pickup, but they did innovate. Okay, now let's take a look at the life cycle of a startup. I'm sure many of you that have gone out and Googled or whatever the case may be, listened to other classes, incubators, accelerators, you've all seen something like this, and most of these terms are not foreign to you. Angel funding, VC funding, institutional funding, common terms you'll see. Now, most of us are going to be in the bootstrapping phase. And so let's talk about these in order. Let's not worry about all these different terms: Series A, C stage, pre-seed stage, bootstrapping, idea creation, or even ideation. Think of it as preparation. You're preparing to go out and get your first round of sophisticated funding so that you can move down the pipeline. In order to do this and get angel funding, you need to understand what the real opportunity is, the timing, not just we have a target market, we've got an available market, we've got an obtainable market. Those are not the opportunity. You need to have a plan to capture that opportunity. You need to know what it's going to cost. That's critical, because if you ask for the wrong amount of money, if you don't know the cost, you're going to ask for the wrong amount of money for funding. Communicate it intelligently. Like we say, sound like a CEO, sound like a leader. Demonstrate you can do what you do, or what you say you're going to do. Now, in most cases, you're going to start looking for these angel funders out here, investors out here, because you're running low on funds and you need to move. You may have received friends and family in the bootstrapping. You may have bootstrapped it all on yourself. You may have self-funded it. But this here is called your skin in the game. Now you're going to look for angel funding. And in order to be successful at that, you have to be able to do these things. You have to understand the opportunity, have a plan, know what it costs, communicate it intelligently, and demonstrate that you can do it. This seed stage here, or what we like to call the validation stage, is probably going to be 2 years. And what you need to do here is take the MVP you're putting together and launching here, or building of the prototype, or whatever you're doing. You need to validate and get to the right product at the right price. What you're going to do is a couple different levels. You're going to start here and test the market with what you have. You're going to make the adjustments in those, and you're going to eventually come out the other end with the right product, the right price. Now, with that said, this is where you're going to start looking for VC funding in the traditional model. You're going to go and get your VC funding. Then you're going to get Series A, Series B, Series C, how many of those necessary for you to eventually work your way through, get through explosive growth, go IPO, get acquisition, become a unicorn. This is the traditional model. Now, in the last piece of that, all you're really looking to do is scale and generate revenue. That's why we call that the execution. So for today, we're going to be talking primarily of preparation and validation, getting that angel funding and getting to the point to where you have validated the demand and validated that you have the right product at the right price. All right. With that said, there's some tribal standards. One is that investors traditionally are looking for unicorn. What is a unicorn? A unicorn is something that's 10 times better than the solution that's currently out there today. Are you 10 times better than them? If you're not, you're probably not a unicorn. However, if you're incorporating AI correctly and using modern tech, you're probably going to be 10 times better than what's out there. So you can probably rest on that one, okay? Now, can you show a clear path to 100 million? If you can't do both of these, you're probably not a unicorn. Less than 5% of the companies that pitch to VCs get funded. Now, if you got invited to pitch to a VC, you've probably got some strong things going on as a startup, or you would not have been invited. But since only 5% get funded, that's because they're not unicorns. You may be a highly successful or potential for being a successful $60 million company. And if you're working under a SaaS model, you're probably making 75 to 85% margin. So you're putting good money in the bank, but you're not a unicorn. You're only $60 million. You can't show that pathway to 100 million. So that's the tribal standard. Now, I believe some changes are coming in this market because the mass amount of AI and changes that are going to be driven by AI will create a lot of opportunities for angel investors and early investors to come in. You should be able to take a look at getting these investors funded, get them out the door, or excuse me, get these startups funded, get them going down the road. And as a startup, you could potentially buy these investors out in a few years and be debt free, knowing that you may not be a unicorn. So there's options out there, but we'll get to that later. Tribal standards. They're looking for a unicorn. Are you a unicorn? If you're a unicorn, then go out and get your funding. But before you begin, there's some things we need to do. First, we need to define your investor profile. And this is critical. Too many startups don't go out and look for the investors prior to going. They just go find an investor, send an email, go to a meeting, get their email, and just flood the market with their pitch deck. This is no different than looking for a job. You should have a basic resume or pitch deck, and it should be adjusted to be specific to the investor you're sending it to. You have to meet their needs. You have to understand them. You need to understand what sectors they're in. Are they a fintech and you're healthcare? Are their sizes 10 million and you're asking for 250K because you're just getting started? Where are they in region? Are they US only, Latin America, EU, Africa? Where are they? Do they do global? So understand their regions. If they don't invest in the region you're in, you either move there, which we talked about, doesn't always get you there. So understand who they are. Now, another thing we hear in a lot of startups is they go, wow, these companies, this VC just funded us, a company like us. So let's go talk to them. As an investor, if we just funded you or somebody like you, then we're not going to fund another company like that. However, what you really want to be looking for is complementary. If we just funded a company that's complementary to what you're doing, and 1 + 1 could be 3, then that's highly motivational as an investor. So look for companies that are complementary to what you're doing. And then look at the involvement of your investor. Active, passive, how passive. You don't want an investor in your office every day trying to drive things, but you also want them to bring something to the table so they can help enhance your growth other than just funding. As you've heard, that's called smart money. Now, here's the key things. Have a funding strategy. How much do you need? When do you want to get it? Why are you getting it? When do you need it? What are you going to do with it? Where you're ending? You have a funding strategy to get from today to the investor exit. This isn't a plan. This is a funding strategy of how you're going to apply the funding to what you're doing. Have a data room. These documents listed here, your pitch deck, plan, financials, P&L, if you're making revenue, cap table, all these will come and they all show maturity as a company. They allow you to clearly communicate your plans, what you want to do, what's going on, where you are today, what does the deal look like, so forth. The more is better. The more you have, the more mature you look. However, it's not about building documents. Documents come as necessary to communicate and capture where you are, what you're doing, and where you think you're going. Next, build your relationships. If you are what we call an army of one, you need a team. You have to have a team. You need to have investors. You need to have attorney or attorneys. You need to have access to insiders in the marketplace. Maybe you have access to accelerators or so forth, but there's relationships and build your ecosystem. You cannot be a single person. You need to get out, talk, and move around. Now, the opportunity to do that today is better than it's ever been. There are platforms, there's numerous places you can go. There's incubators, accelerators in virtually every country. Many of the countries are really starting to learn and understand the startup model and how to apply the various principles of that. But reach out around the world. There's a lot of reasons. There's no reason to not have a small ecosystem around you. So there's what we're looking at. Understand the investor profile, have a funding strategy, build your data room, look like a mature company, and build the relationships and ecosystems around you. Now, equity funding options. There's angel funding and there's VC funding. We talked about that on the previous model. And the real difference in these is angel investors like myself. South Valley Angels, when any of our angels write a check, it comes out of their bank account. It's their check. In venture capital and VCs, they have a fund that has a specific investor thesis that they have filled that fund for. And when they write a check, they're writing somebody else's check. They're writing a check for that fund. Those are the two big differences. As you can see here, angel investors come in early with smaller amounts, and they'll go as high as $200,000. Elon Musk, in theory, is an angel investor. He's what would be called a super angel. He could write checks as big as he wants in theory. Now, angel groups, family offices, they write larger checks. They pool money together much like a VC, only it's still individual check, but they may pool them in to invest in certain vertical markets or certain areas or regions. Now, corporate ventures, virtually every large corporation now has a venture arm. And these differ by corporations. But one of the things corporations do outside of purely just investing is they do challenges, they do hackathons, they do various other methods of things to get investors and do them and have competitions. And you can win money. You can win 25 up to 250K. I've seen them. I think 250K is probably about the most I've seen for most challenges. But the corporates will do the same thing. They have a different pathway. We're not going to dig into that, but they may be looking for R&D. They may be looking for good funding of companies that are in spaces that might be complementary to what they're doing to help move the market along. There's a variety of reasons why corporates go down this pathway. Crowdfunding, ICOs, STOs, or initial coins, security tokens. We're not going to get much into the Kickstarters of the world, the angel list. But like I said, there's a lot of platforms and a lot of ways to get engaged in the startup world today. Crowdfunding is one of them. ICOs, STOs, micro IPOs, they're all part of it. Now, again, earlier we talked about defining your profile. I want to restate that because it's critical to understand the type of investors you want to look for. It's also critically important to understand certain investment considerations and terms as you're going out to talk. What is a convertible note? What is a safe note? In simple terms, they're both debt products, but a convertible note is based on a date that it's due. A safe note is based on a key action happening. It has no date. The advantage of safe notes is that as an investor, we know when that note comes to an end, we know when action happens, and we know what that is. On a safe note, there's no date. We don't know how long that's going to take. It can take months, years, whatever the case may be. On a safe note, though, the advantage is you don't have a cliff. You don't reach a date. And if you haven't achieved what you wanted to achieve, then there's no ending and that note doesn't come to an end and have to be renegotiated, redone, paid off, whatever the case may be. Those are your two notes, convertible safe notes. As a startup, you can also start with equity. There's pros and cons to equity. Investors like getting equity. There's no hassles with a note. They've got their equity, they move, everything moves on. However, as a startup, you're giving away that equity pretty early in the life of things that doesn't have any value to it yet. So you're probably giving away more equity than you need to do so at that time. Cap table, shares, we talked about that. We talked about documents. Understand it, have a strategy, have a cap table, know what your shares are, have a plan for that, have a budget. The other big area of consideration, employees. When do you hire an employee? Employees always look good on the books when you're talking to investors. It shows stability. It makes you look like a real company. However, employees are expensive. You now have to pay taxes and you have insurance and you have all sorts of things that come along with that. So if you're in the United States listening to this, you can do and bring your team on board as 1099s and pay them as a contractor. You can also give them shares. There's ways to do that. It's just different than you would with an employee. It's not an employee stock option plan. It's a different contract. But you can still do all those things. But employees, that's an important thing to consider because it gets expensive as soon as you do that. Now, deal flow. We're going to go through a standard deal flow process and kind of take a look at what that looks like from the investor side of the table as well as the entrepreneur side of the table. So I wake up in the morning as an investor. I just closed a deal. I had an exit. Life's feeling good. I'm going to go look and I want to find another investment. So as an entrepreneur, oh, great. I have a compelling reason for you to engage with me. Now you're going to meet, whether that's at a party or somebody just recommended them to you and you're sending them an email or whatever the case is, you need to send them some information so they know who you are. And normally you're going to send a one-pager. The investors may say, hey, can you send me your pitch deck? In most cases, they may mean a one-pager, but they say pitch deck. So find out if that's truly what they want. In most cases, the more information you give to an investor, the more likely they're going to say no, because you've given them more information to say no to. What you're really trying to do is compel them to return your email or return your phone call, get back in touch with them. So recommend you give them a one-pager. So you've given them a document, and now we're looking at that document, and what we're really looking for is simple, just fit and readiness. Are you in the stage we're interested in? Do you fit what we do? And if you've done your investor alignment earlier, like we talked about, if you did a good job of that, then we are a fit. You do fit what we're looking for. So in that case, we're going to, this looks interesting. So all you're trying to do with the one-pager is get us to give you a call back. You're not trying to answer all the questions, give us all the answers we could possibly have, compel us to ask you to come in for a meeting. Oh, wrong button. There we go. Now, when you come in, what you're doing, we're going to ask you to come in and deliver the opportunity. Now we're going to ask you for the pitch. All you're trying to do out of this first pitch is get to the next meeting. With a one-pager, you just want us to call you back. With the first pitch, you just want to get to the next meeting. Like we said earlier, there's a lot of meetings. It's not just one. You need to get to the next meeting so you can have the follow-on meetings where we're going to go into all the details and due diligence as we can see here. So we're going to have you come in, deliver the opportunity. Now, if you're like South Valley Angels, we have one pitch meeting. If we invite you in to pitch, it's a 30-minute meeting. We go through the details. We have a good discussion. If you're going to larger groups, family offices, here in the Silicon Valley, Band of Angels, Sand Hill Angels, these groups that have 80, 90, 100, 200 investors within them, the first pitch may be to a screening committee who's going to determine whether you meet what they need. They're going to give you some personal suggestions if they like who you are. And then they're going to invite you to come to the next meeting, which is the monthly meeting where all the investors are at. Either way, you're going to pitch and begin the meetings and keep going as long as you can. Now you've noticed it turns green. Now you're going into, if you do successful at the first meeting and we invite you back, you're going to go into the deep dive. We're looking to actually have you come in. We want to meet the team. We want to talk to the team, get more info, see what team dynamics look like. And that may be a follow-up meeting to the first pitch to just go into a longer detail. So a lot of times now, particularly online, many first pitches are anywhere from 2 to 6 minutes, 4 minutes common. I recommend that everybody should be able to give their introductory pitch within 3 minutes. In most cases, most of you entrepreneurs are just repeating yourself after that point anyway. So learn to do it in 3 minutes and you should be able to make it in any single introductory pitch. Now, when we're in the deep dive and we're going through here, we're going to go through the period of time. As long as you are truthful about how you got there and you stay on top of them, you answer and you're responsive and you're professional, once you're in the deep dive, it's probably yours to lose unless something serious goes south in that environment during that time frame. Now, everybody's green because now we're going to get into the due diligence. We're going to spend money for various checks. We're going to start creating documents and term sheets, and we're going to get our legal team going. We're going to look at stuff, and eventually we're going to negotiate a deal. Now, keep in mind during this negotiation, it is a balance. If the investor likes you and they're negotiating, they want to close a deal with you. But also keep in mind that they're going to probably demand what they want, and you're going to either accept it or not accept it. But if the deal's not a good deal and you don't like the deal, don't accept it. It's very hard as an entrepreneur to say no when the checkbook is on the table with a pen on top of it. But this is the process you're going to go through, whether this takes days, weeks, months. The fastest funding that we did with South Valley Angels was 1 week from introduction, from a one-pager till we signed the deal and provided the funding. It's only happened once, and we've been in the Silicon Valley doing deals since 2011. So it's been a long time. It's happened once. And generally, we're about 15 to 30 days. We can generally decide if it's a yes or a no. Now, some large groups may have to go through a variety of folks, and it can take months. Statistically speaking, in 2023, the average time was 3 months, 120 days, as short as less than 30 days if you were a team that had their act together, it came in right at the beginning, and you were just exceptional all the way through. But in most cases, on average, it's 120 days total to get funded, anywhere from 3 to 4 months. All right. Now, we got some of the basics out of the way. Now, let's sit down and talk a little bit about how to pitch to investors and get funded. The big pitch. Let's go. Think and talk like a CEO. I cannot overstate this. As an investor, we're looking for leadership. We're looking for people that can clearly communicate the value proposition and why we're here. And nobody wakes up in the morning as a CEO. In the regular business world, you start in the warehouse, work your way up, become a supervisor, become a manager, become a director, a VP, and eventually you become a CEO. And during that, you pick up the skill sets to talk like a CEO. But in the startup world, you wake up in the morning and say, hey, I'm the CEO of the company. Now, I spent 25 years in systems engineering here in the Valley. I was doing innovation since 1991 for a tier 1 defense contractor. We did it over and over again. I learned how to work with people from all over the scale, on beginners, CEOs. I've seen good CEOs, not so good CEOs, but I came out of systems engineering. I was a technical person. I had to learn how to think more CEO-like. So keep in mind when you're talking, you don't want to sound like a sales rep. You don't want to sound like a developer or an engineer. You want to sound like a CEO. Now, we're not talking just pitch deck topics here. Thinking like a CEO is a mindset. And as a mindset, I would argue, like I said earlier, as a CEO, you should never be selling your product. You should always be selling your vision and why you're doing what you're doing. And so with that in mind, as a CEO, think more about vision and opportunity. We have a vision. We see an opportunity. Know the real problems that need to be solved. If we solve these problems, we'll capture that opportunity. We know where we fit in the competitive landscape. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. And we have a solution to do that. So think strategically, not if you're in a first meeting and you're showing me how easy it is to log into your app, then we're talking, we're in the wrong place in the meeting, talking about the wrong things. The key, sell your product to customers, your vision and business case to investors. When you first meet in that first meeting, you're partially here because the product you sell fits what we're looking for. We're looking for a square peg, you're a square peg. And that may be all I need to know at the beginning of this. What I really want to understand is your business case. Why are we here? What's that look like? You know, most entrepreneurs today don't even really have a vision. And we'll talk about that in a few minutes. So let's start here a little bit. So here's how you see yourself. This is the common pitch we get from startups. We have the best idea, we have the best solution. We have the best value, we provide the most benefits. Nobody's doing what we're doing. Keep in mind, as an investor, we meet with companies like you every day. So many of the companies that you haven't found yet, we already talked to them because they're in meetings like this. Now, it's important for you to absolutely own and believe that what you are building is, in fact, the best idea, the best solution possible to meet the needs of the future. However, that's not how we see you as an investor. We said earlier, I was talking about opportunity. All of you entrepreneurs in our lobby all say you have the best product. Nobody's doing what you're doing. It's going to change the world. And maybe it is. But let's say we're looking for the best opportunity and we're going to fund one of you today. One of you in our lobby is going to get a check. What problems do you need to be solving? And why will that be you? So, as an investor, we're not complicated. We have 3 things that we're really looking for. If you can give us the highest return on investment in the shortest amount of time at the lowest risk, you will get our check. Oh, by the way, what are you making? So, if you're spending 8 out of your 9 or 10 pages of your pitch deck selling us your product, you're missing the point. We're here looking for an opportunity, and that opportunity is the highest return on investment in the shortest amount of time and the lowest risk. And if that's you, you will get the check. Now, with that said, part of that is that you includes that we believe in what you're doing, and the product is in fact a good product, and the team is a good team, and all the check marks are there as well. Those are the analytics to determine whether or not you're the best opportunity. But this is what we're looking for. Now, I mentioned earlier that there's things called impact investors. Impact investors add the impact of what you're doing, and it becomes more important than purely a financial gain. But all investors want financial gain. Now, first thing to keep in mind, it's not all about the pitch deck. When I started working with startups, I came into the startup world in probably 2006 after we finished a huge contract that took 2.5 years. We got done with that. The economy in the US was a little bit upside down. And so a lot of my corporate companies and corporate clients they just weren't hiring and doing things anymore. They were waiting to hold off until the economy turned around. So since I'm here in the Silicon Valley, what's always happening in the Silicon Valley? Startups. So I went back to the startup market and decided to go into that, not so much to launch a startup or be part of a startup, but to bring the skill sets I'd learned over the last, career pieces and 20 years of working in innovation. And I found some areas that I thought were being addressed incorrectly in the startup world, and I brought those philosophies with me. When I first got started, I ended up seeing a lot of problems with the people I was working with where everything was focused around building a pitch deck. And it's not about building a pitch deck. It's about building a great scalable business. If you've put everything together to do that, then the pitch deck is simply documenting that. It takes 5 minutes, no problem. It's easy to do. Now, when I started this in 2006, I was in kind of a good timing in an interesting place in the Silicon Valley. I started working with a group of folks that were trying to help startups get going. And that's where I got my first taste of organized building of startups. And that company was just getting started themselves. I think they had actually kicked off in 2006. I started working with them in probably 2007, probably. And that was Plug and Play. They were still trying to figure out how to pay the lease payment on the building next month. Now, of course, they're one of the most active firms in the world as far as creating innovation and funding. But I worked from them then I went to Nest GSV, then I went up and worked with Draper Universities, and during the 2006 to 2018, I pretty much worked with every incubator accelerator that opened up at some time or another. And I saw this focus on pitch decks. It's not about the pitch deck. The pitch deck should be professional. It should get the message across, but it's about the great scalable business. If you don't have that, the pitch deck doesn't matter. Now, common pitch decks. I'm sure those of you that have gone out and looked at pitching, Guy Kawasaki, Sequoia Capital. They were around when I was in the .com. They've been around forever. Sequoia Capital came out of got launched with the PayPal mafia. When they got their exits from PayPal, Sequoia Capital was created along with other companies. But Guy Kawasaki, this is his method. I'm sure we've all looked at him. Big word, one word, big, 3 bullets at the most. Sequoia Capital, much more of a legal and corporate style, but they've been around forever. Now, as an investor, we don't really care what order it is. We're looking for something that's compelling and clear, and we understand it. So make it yours. If neither one of these fit your style, do it the way that fits your style. You'll be more confident. You'll feel better doing it. It won't feel like you're trying to force it. Now, again, if you're talking to investors prior to sending them anything and they say, oh, we use the Sequoia Capital format, by all means, use the Sequoia Capital format. But if there's no format, make it yours. Be comfortable. Now, we're back to thinking like a CEO a little bit. What I'd like you to do is take a look at a format and thinking in a methodology that you could use for a pitch deck, although it's different. But right now, let's talk about it of thinking like a CEO. Formulate your business case from your vision. If you're sitting down today and looking at the problems that the customer has today, I would argue is how did you get to that customer so fast? There's a lot of work before you figure out who the customer is. And how do you know that anybody wants the problem you're solving? So as a CEO, thinking like a CEO, I have a vision. And because of the way I see the future, I understand what the opportunity is. I see the trends that are happening. I see the market dynamics. I can see the demographics. I understand what's going on with age groups. I understand what's happening in my market spaces, and I understand what's happening based on where my vision says it is and where we want to go. I have a plan, and we know what it costs to do it. Back it up with numbers, facts, and measurable. So your message as you go through here as a CEO is I have a vision. I see an opportunity. I understand where the competition is and where we fit. I understand the problems necessary to capture that opportunity. I know what a future solution looks like. And we have a product that achieves those requirements that we believe need to be there in the future. We have a strategic plan to get there and let you exit as an investor. We have the team to execute. We understand what it costs, and we need X amount to go down to get it finished. Now, key elements here. Where is the evidence of demand? What numbers do you have to show that somebody wants it? Too many entrepreneurs, when you come and pitch, there's a lot of arm waving and you make statements. Oh, this is fragmented. This takes too long. This is too expensive. This isn't accurate enough. And it may be that all those true statements are in fact true. But there's no meat, there's no metrics. It doesn't look like you've done the analysis to really define the opportunity and why you're doing what you're doing. So where's the evidence of demand, and is your vision valid? Oh, wrong button. Present like a CEO. What do you mean by that? If you're thinking like a CEO, your pitch deck is comfortable, you're comfortable with what you're doing, you stand behind what you're saying, you're going to come across confident. It's about confidence. As an investor, when we're listening to you pitch, one of the things we're thinking of, would I follow this person? Would I join this team? Do I believe that person's going to take us where we need to go? That's important in the beginning of this. It's about leadership with the CEO, leadership of the team, because you're going to develop the organization that's going to drive this forward. So think like a CEO. Start from a vision, understand the opportunity, be able to measure the metrics so that you can prove there's evidence of demand, and then pitch like a CEO confidently. Now, let's work our way through that. So we have a vision. We see an opportunity. It's the 200 billion whatever markets it in. This defines your sandbox. What sandbox are you in? That number is probably your target market, the big number that you advertise. We are in the $200 billion market. We're going to get some piece of this sandbox. And this is a great sandbox to be in because the sandbox is growing and demand is coming. Now, next level below that opportunity is validating your vision. Why is your vision accurate? So let's say, for example, our vision is we believe the future of the automobile will be electric. That puts us in the vehicle market, electric vehicle market, which is growing in massive leaps and bounds. Maybe not as fast as everybody wanted, but it's growing nonetheless, and it's continuing to pick up speed. Now, validate my vision. Why is the vehicle market good to go into? Because there's changing demographics. There's regulations forcing electric vehicles to be part of the solution. There's more companies that are coming out. There's changing tech. There's good reasons to be in this market. The biggest questioning we're asking with your vision is why now? 42% of startups fail because of timing. So the sandbox is big. We validated it's a good market to be in. Our vision of the electric vehicle and why that's a good space is good. Now we're going to drive it down to our market segments, not necessarily our customer personas at this point, but the market segments. And we've decided that we want to go into two market segments, batteries and charging stations, because every electric vehicle has to have them. Now, regardless of the market you're in, as a CEO, you should be able to go from I have a vision to I see an opportunity to where I understand the trends and what's happening and identified the market segments I want to go into. If you can do that, you've got half the battle won. Very few startups I ask today. If there's 10 startups in a room and I ask who has a vision, normally I get crickets. Today's entrepreneurs don't have visions because the internet says you have to be solving a problem. So everybody sits down, puts their head down, and stands up and solves the problem that their gut tells them the world needs. And now they've arrived at a solution before really understanding if the market dynamics are correct or what's driving it. Just because you built it does not mean the market will want it in 3 years. And having done innovation most of my career, if you're focused on the problems of today, you're probably solving a solution of today. And that's why 42% of startups fail, because they simply built the solution they believe the market needs because of the background they have. Now, not saying you can't be successful doing this, but in most cases, if you think that you know the product you want to build, I would go back and understand where the market's going and really focus on this, validate your vision. This is the critical part that is missing. This is what drives whether there's a business case here. So now that I have a vision and I see the opportunity, I now can look at the strategic problems I need to solve. So the strategic problem is, how do you capture the opportunity? In the examples I used earlier with this electric vehicle, I said, we're going to go and we're going to build charging stations and batteries because every vehicle needs them. So if in the battery market, for me to strategically capture the opportunity, I have to build a better battery. Nobody wants a smaller battery. Nobody wants a cheaper battery. Nobody wants a lighter battery. Everybody wants a battery that'll go 1,000 miles or forever or whatever the number turns out to be. And if I can do that, I can capture the battery market. However, in the charging station market, I do not have to build a better charging station. If I can put it on every corner or in every new home built, then I can capture the charging market. That's a strategic problem. What is the strategic problem you have to do in order to capture the opportunity? The next are the today tactical / future problems that the customer will have. So you need to be 10 times better than what's out there today, right? So if all you're talking about is the customer struggling with Excel and that's this, so forth and so on, these may be all true. However, the future problems that are coming along with that the customer is going to have to deal with are going to be probably more than that. So the real thing here are the tactical problems, which is where most of you startups spend in your time telling us all the problems the customer has today. What you're really trying to say is we're 10 times better than what's out there today. And you're going to focus on the future problems that are coming. How do you get adoption? How do you handle emerging tech out of the AI world or things that may be coming in the world of computers and technology in general? Are you staying engaged so that in 2 to 3 years from now, when you do have the product everybody wants and you're putting it out the door, it's compatible with what's out there and it's ready to plug right in and go? Now, with that said, if you want to be simple about the strategic problem, if you're doing an AI solution, you're doing a SaaS model, or you're working in business or whatever you're doing, in most cases, the big strategic problem you're trying to solve today is how can your customers transition to the AI-driven economy, society, and revenue streams. This is the problem that needs to be solved. Just like back in the computer days with the Steve Jobs and the Bill Gates and so forth. The computer came out, they helped us transition to where the computer industry is today. The AI world is going to go through that same model. You're going to help everyone transition to that. You're going to create a lot of jobs that don't exist and so forth and so on. But these are the problems you need to solve. A strategic, the today's problems and future problems of the customer, and then adoption and emerging tech that's coming. And you have to define the right solution. The solution isn't necessarily the product you're building, but it is the right function, the right performance, and the right tech to be viable in the future. If today it gets done in 100 hours and you believe that the right solution in the future has to be able to do it in 30 seconds, then there you go. Now, we know what the problems are and we know what the solutions need to be viable. Now we build the product. So now in the mindset of getting funded, you've done your homework, you've done what's necessary to understand the business case, you understand the product to be built. Now, here's how you replace all those pages for your product in one simple 4-bullet statement, your product. What is it? What does it do? How does it do it? And why is it important? Don't need 10 pages to explain this. You're in your first meeting with an investor, you're not there to educate them. You're not there to educate them on the market. You're not there to educate them on how your product works and why your high tech in the middle of it is so important. You're not there to educate them. You're there to present them a business case. We need to know what your product is. Quite often, at the end of a pitch, we may not even know what your product is or what it does. So let's use an example of, let's use transportation again. So instead of electric vehicle, I'm going to tell you about a new product that we're designing. What is it? It's called a bicycle. You may have seen it, read about them and so forth, but what does it do? Just in case you're not familiar, it moves you from point A to point B. How does it do it? How does it do it? It does it with human power. It requires no outside energy source. Why is this important? Because it will always be the most efficient form of transportation, period. There's my 30-second pitch. What is it? What does it do? How does it do it? Why is it important? Now, this is not easy to do, to break what you've got in your head and all the things that you think are important to one sentence for each one of these questions. If you can do that, though, you'll start sounding like a CEO, not a sales rep, not a technician or a developer or an engineer. You're going to sound like a CEO. Now, let's say, for example, as an investor, I have 10 companies that are doing what you're doing or close to what you're doing in my space. And again, I'm going to find fun to one of you today. Well, now you all come in and tell me what you're doing, but you're all doing kind of the same thing. You may be doing it slightly different, but still you're all kind of doing the same thing. So where's the differentiator in there? Keep in mind, as an entrepreneur, there's a lot of companies doing what you're doing. If there's not, you're probably not in the market. But there's only one of you. And that's where the differentiating can come from in the first meeting. It's not about better, faster, cheaper, all these good things. Here's what it is. Here's what it does. Here's how it does it. And this is why it's important. That's all critical. But what's really differentiating you from the very first meeting is you. There's only one of you. There's only one team like yours. Do you have any number of these bullets? Do you have highly defensible patents? Do you have a different business model that's kind of uniquely different between the rest that everybody's doing? You know, how and why you do something, maybe how you're doing it and the reasons that you're doing it are compelling reasons by themselves. The team, you have a unique team. Partnerships, you've got some strategic partnerships. I worked with a startup once that was in the alcohol industry, and we're selling a product that would be sold in stadiums. So they needed to go out and meet with sports stadiums across the country. One of the cousins of the CEO was actually a director of sales within Budweiser. They had access to every stadium in the US. And so this company was able to just say, hey, we want to go down to SoCal and meet with the teams. So his cousin would call the stadiums up and they'd have a meeting with the Clippers. They'd have a meeting with the Lakers. They'd have a meeting with the Dodgers. They'd have meetings with the Rams, and on and on and on. They were able to get meetings. This was an unfair advantage. They could set up 5, 6, 10, 20, 15 meetings in less time than their competitors could set up a first meeting. So these become the why you, the squishy thing. You're all solving the same problems. You're all building a similar kind of product, and your product may in fact have better things than theirs, but others may have better things than you do or design better, whatever. So think about this why you. That becomes your first real differentiator. So take this slide right here, and this can become your core 5, 10, 30, 60-second message. Keeping in mind that as an investor, we're looking for the highest return in the shortest amount of time with the least amount of risk. And you can sprinkle this in and get to the point that's really important. Now, I want to talk a little bit about competitive landscape. I'm sure most of you out there have a competitive landscape. You've got the classic table with the competitors across the top, features down the left side, or vice versa. And you've got all the yeses and the competitors don't, and therefore your product's better. Now, as an investor, particularly in pre-seed, I find it interesting when startups spend so much time trying to sell us how great their product is when they haven't even built it yet, or they haven't even finished it yet, or they haven't even launched it yet. So to sit here and try to convince us that you've got the product that's going to be the winning product in 3 years from now, and you haven't even put it out there and tested it, that's the wrong approach. That's a great chart to ensure that you're building a competitive product with the folks that are out there today. And it's important for your investors, excuse me, it's important for your design team to ensure they're building it. And it will probably be important to us for one of the follow-on meetings. We want to understand in more detail how your product fits in the marketplace. But what we're going to do here is we're going to talk about a competitive landscape in a completely different manner. We're going to do it in a timeline, not a product. This is where your vision comes to rest. I have a vision. I see an opportunity. I know the problems that need to be solved. I know the product that can do it. And now we're going to talk about how we fit. So we're talking about business positioning and insight, not a product comparison. Again, if you haven't built it or nobody's used it, how do we have any idea if your product's a better product? So everybody has three competitive segments. Again, think about it in a timeline. You've got the incumbents. They've been doing it for 20 years. They've been doing it forever. They're the 800-pound gorillas. Everybody knows who they are. But they've also been around forever, doing it the way they do it, and that's what they do. Then you have the new kids on the block. In most cases, they probably took what the incumbents are doing and moved it online, made it a SaaS model, made it accessible to everybody, put it in the cloud, so forth and so on. They've maybe adjusted their market fit and who they're going with. So new kids on the block. In this case, you probably do know their name. They're the company that's been out 3 to 7 years. They're the new kids. Everybody knows who they are. They're kind of hot. They're interesting. And then you have the next generation like you. And this is really who you're competing. The others are already there and you're not competing with them. The next generation like you in 2 years, when you walk out with the product you think the market wants, and all of a sudden your competitors are now walking out the door at the same time. Next generation. So how do we present this in case? Rather than a table, we're going to use a classic quad chart. And as you all know, we're going to end up here in the upper right-hand corner. And now we have to talk the message about that and explain how we do that. Part of it's psychology, because you don't want to be down here, because from the going right and down is bad, and going right and up is always good. So you're going to be up here. You could be anywhere, but let's say you're going to be up here. Now, we start off with a vision. Remember, your vision defines your future market. We believe the future is going to be faster and smarter. It's going to get things done for you. So now you're going to go through your presentation. If you take a look at the incumbents and the way we've been able to do this for the last 25 years, for the definition that we said back in the beginning, they're not fast enough, they're not smarter, they use Excel spreadsheets, they use all these old resources to do it, but it doesn't matter. They're all making millions and millions of dollars, and it's what they do. So in most cases, they're going to be 180 degrees from you. So the incumbents are doing this. In fact, this might not even be brands or companies anymore. They may be technologies approaches, because there's so many people doing it. Then you got the new kids on the block. They took that and made it a little bit smarter, made it a little bit faster, and started moving up the ranks a little bit. Now, when it comes to the next generation like you, you may not know any. Not uncommon, because they're new like you. But if you do, you might say, hey, we know one company that's doing something similar to what we're doing, head in this direction, but they're in the healthcare industry, so faster is not important for them. They are really focused on being smarter, because in their industry, a mistake can result in death. Therefore, it needs to be smarter rather than faster. But we truly believe that if you're not moving in a faster, smarter direction, you're wrong. So now this is what lays out your path. We believe the incumbents are doing it this way. The new kids are blocking on this. And if you're not, and we got people like that, and if you're not moving in this direction, you can see it. This is more powerful than here's our TAM, here's our SAM, and here's our SOM. Your available market, obtainable market. This is much more. This gives you insight. Now, if you've gotten from this point, right, I have a vision, we know the problems. I have a vision, we know the opportunity. We know the problems that need to be solved. We've done a product that we believe does that. And this is how we fit in the marketplace. So I like to refer to the competition slide here as the critical piece. So most startups we get spend most of their time selling us a product. So you stand up and say, we've built a canoe. This is an amazing canoe. The canoe will do things no other canoe has ever done. And we look at that and go, wow, you're right. This is a pretty cool canoe. I like this canoe. As a customer, I might buy this canoe. However, here's where the problem arises. If you put your canoe in the wrong stream, it will not take you where you want to go. If I want to go over here and I put it in this stream, it doesn't matter how good my canoe is. I'm going to fail because I'm never going to get where I want to go. And this is where the vision, the opportunity, and understanding the right problems comes into play, is ensuring that you've put your canoe in the right stream. Now, maybe you didn't build the best canoe, but it's an MVP. You're going to put it out and test it and build it and test it and fix it and test it and fix it and test it over the next 2 years. You're going to validate it. You're going to arrive at the right product at the right price. If I put a shaky canoe in the right river to go where I want to go and it starts leaking, I can pull off the river and I can fix that. I can put it back in the river and keep going. But if I put it in the wrong river, I can't fix that. I can never get where I want to be going. So keep that in mind. Think of your competition as the direction to be going, not that your product is already better than everybody else's out there today. And if you present this in this kind of a manner, use animation like we showed here. And if you're not familiar with these charts, these are 100%. So you define faster by what you mean faster. That's 100%, that's 0, that's 50%. You define smarter the way you want to define smarter, 100%, 0%. This is how you define it. You are the epitome of how you define faster and smarter. So now we've established a strong business case. And that is the biggest part that's missing for most entrepreneurs. And that is the part most investors want to know. What is the business case? Now, again, we said we have a plan, we have a cost. We're not going into a lot of that, but we're going to talk a little bit about the operations and planning, because these are the things that in the follow-on meetings establish you can do it. So business development, that's idea to revenue. When you're doing planning for business, product, and operations, you have idea to revenue for business, idea to production for a product, and support product. Operations is purely the necessary evil to do the other, which is to sell something and build it. Now, when we're talking about this, we're talking about planning and traction, and that's what we're talking about here. In many cases, if all you have time to do is present your business case, that will more likely get you to the next meeting, where you're going to talk in detail about your operations planning and so forth. Now, if you have a 30-minute talk with an investor, you have plenty of time to go through the visions and opportunities and all these kind of things, talk about your costs, your plans, take a look at a financial model maybe. But in most of today's presentations on your first pitch, you're not going to have time for all that. You need to sell your business case and they'll invite you back. Now, when you want to put down numbers to show what you're doing or to evidence for demand, you can do things during the early stage while you're building the products. You can go and do surveys, talk to people, start building numbers. I've worked with startups that didn't think they had any traction, yet they had 25,000 people following them on Facebook. That is a number. Use your numbers early on. It's not going to be revenue if you're not selling anything. So take a look at building your business and getting things out there and looking at your sales channels. Product development, that's simple. Build a product, do it in sprints, get it out there and test it, fix it, test it, fix it. You can't wait until it's completely done, then put it out there, because one, you'll probably took too long. And now you may find that you made some fundamental errors that are going to cost a huge amount to fix it when you could have fixed them in a more affordable and effective process. Again, operations is purely the necessarily evil to do the other two and shows your efficiency. This is a kind of plan that you can put together in the way of thinking, not necessarily that you're going to make this a slide in your deck, although this could be a very nice slide if you had a longer meeting to talk about, like a 30-minute meeting. The risk to this deck is most entrepreneurs get stuck. Any one of these bullets on this table, right, this chart right here, you can talk about for a half hour. And many entrepreneurs do that. They get into one and they can't get out. But the idea is traction. You've completed these things. You've self-funded it. This is your bootstrapping. You've got skin in the game. You did these things and you accomplished these things during this time. You smell like a company. You've got a good product and you understand what's going on. Now you're going to look for some funding to go out here and go beyond that. Now you're going to go through a 2-year period here. And this is what you're going to do with the money. You're going to validate it. You're going to build some key features in there, and you're going to grow the operations and become a scalable company. Now, you may choose not to get any more funding. But if you go down the traditional road here, now you're going to get your growth funding. These numbers are just randomly pulled out. You may be looking at 250K for this stage, $1 million for this stage right here, and 10 million for this stage right here. Or you may decide that at this stage, you can be profitable on your own. You can tell your investors, the angel investors here, you're going to give them 3 times return on investment in 3 years. They give you $1 million. Down here, you're making $10 million. You give them they give you $1 million. You give them $3 million back. The math all works. Everybody's happy. But this is the kind of thing that shows thought and relevant. And all these numbers come out of your financial model. So you have to do your financial models to get these things done, to roll this up, to have credibility and not look like you're winging it and look and feel and smell like a legitimate company. So in summary, to wrap this up, you need to have a vision and a direction. As a CEO, you only have 2 jobs. One of those is to bring a vision to the table. The other one is to raise money. And if you don't bring the vision to the table, who's going to? You're going to hire somebody and then you're going to build a company around their vision. So have a vision and a direction. This is what lets you know that your company is staying on the critical path. And you can see when you start veering. You can see if you're headed to the wrong stream. You can start seeing what's going on because you understand the direction you believe you need to go. You learn to speak strategically. You're not going to get bogged down in details. They're unimportant for a particular meeting. You know how to work your way through the introductory meeting to detailed meeting. You have the ability that if I give a vision and a high-level discussion of what we're doing, why we're doing it, why it's a solid business case, and there's somebody in the room that actually understands what you're doing, they may ask a really good technical question. A good CEO can go down to the details, answer that question, and then come back up and continue speaking strategically. Don't get caught up with somebody asking you a technology question or something and then get stuck down in the technology and not be able to get back up. Speak strategically. Be confident. Be passionate. I rarely find an entrepreneur that's not passionate. Lead by example. If you're doing it, the people around you will do it. And that's what we have for today. Here's my email, Gary@SouthValleyAngels.com. Thank you very much. Stay engaged. Send me an email. We work with startups across the board. We work with incubators. We work with accelerators globally. GLJ Group has launched well over 2,000 startups since it's been in 2004 when we launched. South Valley Angels, we've funded a lot of companies. We're very well connected in the Valley. We have a global network around the globe. And we started an MVP startup platform 2 years ago called ScaleupStream, which puts the power in the hands of the entrepreneur. I've always felt that the startup model is a terrible model for entrepreneurs. You have very little control. You have to stand up here in the Valley with a sign on Sand Hill Road that says, "I'm awesome, pick me." So look at ScaleupStream if you're interested in funding. Go out there. You can reach out directly with investors. You can build your ecosystem. Send me an email at South Valley Angels if you have any questions. Stay engaged. Keep moving forward. Thank you.